You're listening to Season 10 of Mobile Suit Breakdown, a weekly podcast covering the entirety of sci-fi mega franchise Mobile Suit Gundam from 1979 to today.
This is episode 10.34, No Good Choices, No Choices at All, and we're your hosts. I'm Tom, and motorcycle battleships are cool and all, but aren't there other things kids love that could be turned into battleships? Skateboard battleships? Pogo stick battleships? Maybe even boat battleships?
And I'm Nina, new to Victory Gundam, and I say we stick with motorcycles since I already have my Class M license.
Ooh, Class M. I don't know what that means, but it sounds mysterious. Class M for murder.
Mobile Suit Breakdown is made possible by our paying subscribers, a terribly refined and sophisticated bunch. Thank you all, and special thanks to our newest patron, Dave Z. You keep us Genki. And an announcement, I am traveling part of next week, and so we won't be releasing a new episode, but we will be back on our regular release schedule the following week.
This week we're covering Victory Episode 34, Kyodai Rora Saksen, or Operation Giant Roller. The episode was written by Okeya Akira and storyboarded by Yamamoto Yusuke, who also directed. Nishimura Nobuyoshi was in charge of the animation. And now, the recap. After the battle at Underhook, the League Militaire lost track of the Motorrad fleets. Yes, fleets. Chronicle has divided his forces into at least 3 units, with old friend Arbeo Pipiniden commanding his vanguard. The Lean Horse pilots search fruitlessly for the enemy vessels, core fighters from the air, and mobile suits underwater. It's only when Odello spots a school of fish behaving oddly that he realizes the bulk of the Zanskar forces are moving through his sector, headed for the shores of Mexico. He relays the sighting back to the mothership, and the League springs into action. The old men of the League have not been idle either. They've linked up with their colleagues still on Earth, and better still, rumors are swirling that the Federation garrison has finally mobilized to confront the Motorrads. The Shrike team are en route to launch a preliminary attack against the Motorrads, but below the waves, Odello is spotted and engaged by the fleet's mobile suit pickets. He skirmishes against Gazbarl of the Katajina unit in a new model Zolidia, while the Motorrads continue unhindered on their course. Tomash soon joins the fight, and together, in the murk and confusion of the seabed, they manage to disable Gazbarl's suit and take him captive. Pipiniden, aboard his flagship Rasteo, gives the order to make landfall, initiating Operation Earth Clean, the first true test of the Motorrads and the purpose for which they were built. If there was any doubt about the nature of this operation, it is soon dispelled. The Motorrads are to serve as gigantic steamrollers, flattening buildings, trees, people, entire cities in their inexorable advance. The city has no defenses to speak of. 2 mobile suits but no pilots, some missile trucks, anti-tank guns. A local mechanic, Mizuho, borrows a Federation suit from the garrison and tries to confront the lead Motorrad, but heroism makes a poor weapon and a worse shield. The last thing she sees is the Motorrad's front tire looming over her, and the screaming begins. Arriving in the city, Uso is horrified to find crowds of civilians, many of them children, caught up in the attack. He may not be shocked by Zanskar's inhumanity any longer, but the capacity for outrage remains. Then, Katajina arrives. He didn't want to believe that she had fallen this far. Crushing people, destroying their homes, it's unforgivable, worse than the guillotine. Katajina insists that Uso just doesn't understand. Queen Maria only wants to crush the filthy adults, to fertilize the earth with their corpses, all for the sake of the children. Chronicle's Adrasia flagship is carrying 2 very important prisoners, Mira Miguel and Shakti. Uso's mother can see the destruction from the window in her cell, and she shudders with disgust, knowing that her own body weight is, in a tiny way, helping to crush these victims. But Shakti's cell has no windows, Uncle Chronicle has ordered that she not be allowed to see what they do in her mother's name. The League's advance force has finally made contact with Chronicle, but they're trying desperately to stop the ships without destroying them, for fear of setting off the nuclear reactors aboard. Even Uso, in the V2, augmented by the power of a captured Einrad, can do no more than scratch the paint on the flagship. But help is coming. A Federation Forces unit is preparing to stop the Motorrad fleet. All the League can do now is slow the battleships down, wear them out, perhaps push them off course. One of the Shrikes, Merklien of the second team, crashes her gun easy into an enemy suit. One of the reactors detonates, and the shockwave from the blast forces a brief pause in the action. Marbet can't bring herself to condone a nuclear war, but Connie and Yuka both seem to realize that it may be their only option. Uso has already come to the same conclusion. He uses this moment to grab an abandoned Javelin suit and carries it into the path of the fleet. He means to detonate it from afar, but hesitates at the last moment. Yuka takes the shot instead. The explosion is massive, the mushroom cloud visible for miles around, and an escort cruiser, caught in the blast, is disabled. But Chronicle's flagship and the other escorts escape unscathed. Uso tries to pursue them. At this point, he doesn't care about plans or strategies or winning the war. He just wants to prevent this from happening again to some other city. Odello and Tomash hold him back. There's nothing he can do on his own. Not now. Not against the Motorrads. And, far to the north, Pipiniden's advance fleet engages the Federation blockade. This episode really sums up the duality of Victory Gundam, and really Gundam as a whole. The inherent silliness of massive, bigger-than-cities battleships driving around on oversized motorcycle tires, and then the absolute horror that they inflict on the people of the city. It's just not Gundam without a mixture of silliness and dread.
This also feels like an episode where perhaps the writers realized, it's been a long time since we saw Vespa or Zanskar guillotine anybody. We need to remind everybody just how evil and horrible they are.
Could be. Certainly they have answered the question we have been asking for weeks now. What is the real threat of the Motorrad fleet? What are they doing? Why do they need to be stopped? Well, okay. I guess I'm on board now. They must be stopped, whatever the cost.
And various Zanskar goals, attitudes, and so on that have been less explicit up until this point are now being made more obvious and more explicit. I noticed that Gazbarl repeats What's-His-Face's comment about the League militaire pilots being mice or rats, being vermin.
And that's consistent with the way they talk about the people of Earth, calling this a cleansing operation, talking about leveling the ground.
And that they don't even mention the people. The people, it doesn't even occur to them as significant that the city is full of people.
Well, Katagina does. Katagina alone acknowledges the people by saying the adults should be killed and turned into fertilizer for the good of the children.
Right, because definitely they're not killing any children.
No, we didn't just watch them almost kill a whole group of children. In fact, the prior scene shows like 1 or 2 adults shepherding dozens of children out of the city, or trying to get them out of the city. Like, given the scale of these Motorrad battleships, which I think maybe their scale is not entirely consistent scene to scene. Sometimes they look maybe a little bit too big, but given the scale of the Motorrad battleships and given the speed at which they are advancing, I think it's a fair bet that basically every civilian you see at any point in this episode is dead by the end of it. I don't think there's a lot of getting out of the way of these things.
And the handful of people who perhaps do survive, it's by random luck.
Mm-hmm.
Duker Eek's comment about testing the effectiveness of their guns in atmosphere, this very dispassionate, we're just doing a weapons test. on a city full of people. This is unmentioned, apparently not important.
The callous disregard of all of the Zanskar people, the way all of it's hidden behind this sanitized language, the sheer indifference they feel to the defenders' desperate attempts to stave them off. That opening scene with Mizuho and the other, I think, League Militaire soldier is so arresting, like desperately trying to drive these enemies away from their city, away from their home, and the people in the Motorrad battleships don't even notice them.
In case anyone wondered, Mizuho is the one I immediately loved.
She's great. She's very Genki. She belongs on the Shrike team.
And not to get sidetracked, but Uso's lone charge at the end of the episode echoes Mizuho's lone charge from the beginning.
Both in its desperation, in its presentation, and in its inadequacy to the challenge. Neither of them are able to stop the inevitable progress of the Motorrads.
I want to return for a moment to Dukerik's comment, because I'm almost positive that I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but when I studied abroad in Japan, we visited the Hiroshima Peace Memorial and the Museum of the Atomic Bombing. Extremely powerful experiences, really incredible museum. If you are in Japan and going to be near Hiroshima, I do recommend it. But one of the exhibits that stuck with me the most, and this included transcriptions of audio recordings and excerpts from documents from that time, was one about why Hiroshima was chosen. And a lot of it had to do with its perceived suitability as a weapon test site. That because it was on this fairly flat plain and then sort of ringed by highlands, that it would contain the blast in some way and show them the effects of the blast on this flat area, that a bridge in the center of town was a perfect target for the bombers to sight, and that was a major influence in choosing that city over some other city.
And that it had been spared earlier bombing campaigns, conventional strategic bombing campaigns, so that it could be used as a test in the future. There's a technological fetishism to all of it. Dukerik, besides his obsession with motorbikes and now with the Motorrad, just really, really into this technological superiority that Zanskar has. It's so cool. It makes his heart flutter to see the Motorrads in action.
Which would also explain why they are continually releasing new model mobile suits. I think Gosbarl mentions
the
yet
Zolidia.
Another. Yeah.
Which is okay, yeah, fine. We're doing the constant treadmill, introducing new mobile suits left and right. But are those being developed aboard the Motorrads? They haven't stopped to pick up new mobile suits. I don't know. It's a fool who looks for logic in the chambers of the Gundam military-industrial complex and the development of new mobile weapons. But part of the appeal behind mecha as a genre is because war has gotten so mechanized, so industrialized, it's on such a large scale that the human beings in it are lost. And mecha is appealing because you can have a modern war, you can have a mechanized war, and yet it still feels human-scaled. An individual human can still have an effect, and you still see these human bodies flying around, firing their guns. Yet the mecha themselves are machines. And there is a similar comparison between the guillotine and the Motorrads. First, you make the slaughter mechanized in the form of the guillotine. Then it becomes industrialized. It becomes mass-scale slaughter in the form of the Motorrads.
This dovetails with Chronicle's character development, because we've watched Chronicle go from occasionally somewhat conflicted about the actions of Zanskar and Vespa to saying the most ridiculous, illogical, I really want to curse here, just spewing nonsense after nonsense, totally without any sense of irony or of how ridiculous he sounds.
No, there is some part of him that still recognizes that what he's doing here is monstrous, that all of this is hypocrisy. That's why he's wearing the mask.
See, I love the scene of him and the captain of that ship where the captain is basically like, you don't have to wear that mask, right? The air conditioning and I assume air purification on the ship is working properly and is really good. And Chronicle's like, no, I can still feel the dirt in the air, which is basically just a proxy for him being like, no, I can't stand to be on this filthy planet with its filthy inhabitants.
No, I think it's that he knows what he's doing is like foul. He's separating himself from the actions that his body is taking.
No, see, I think it's that he thinks the Earth and everyone on it and everything it represents is filthy.
Impure, unclean.
And the captain makes kind of a little face after Chronicle says this, by the way.
You know who also descended to Earth and then destroyed cities left and right? Garmazabi. I'm just saying.
It's not one of the core through lines in the story this episode, but Uso and Shakti are also learning about what it means for someone to be used, someone to be a pawn and a figurehead. For Uso's part, because after hearing Katajina say the patently ridiculous, oh, we're leveling this city and everyone in it for the children. He yells, that queen would never say that. He's met her. He had kind of a feel from Maria. He saw her at the healing ceremony. She also helped him escape and helped him get Shakti away. So he's beginning to have a sense that a lot of what people attribute to her, attribute to Mariaism, is not anything that Maria Pure Harmonia has said. It's what they think, what they want, and then they slap her face on it to give it legitimacy. Shakti is a wonderful potential future figurehead and pawn because Shakti is a child and so theoretically easier to control. But they know Shakti finds all of this horrible. They know that she's very sensitive to what's happening, to the violence and the destruction, and that she wants it to stop. And that their best chance of being able to use her is to make sure she knows as little about what actually happens as possible.
And again, the sanitized language. This is merely the land leveling phase of the operation. It's an absurd statement. On its face, anybody who hears it and thinks about it will immediately realize what that means. And, of course, Shakti does. But, I don't know, calling it a fig leaf is almost too generous. Like, they need to say it, but nobody needs to believe it. But maybe they need to pretend to believe it, to trick themselves into believing it.
Another one of those moments is at the end of the episode when Chronicle is lamenting, like, oh, how could the Ligue Militaire use the nuclear engines in mobile suits to try to destroy us when they're just spreading nuclear waste and nuclear fallout everywhere? We specifically designed these horrifying killing machines so that they wouldn't spread nuclear waste everywhere. When he already said moments ago in this same episode, well, it's inevitable in battle that some nuclear engines are going to blow up.
Well, so the problem is that they're resisting us. If they would stop resisting us, there wouldn't be any problems.
Just all those dead people.
Look, we've already established in prior episodes that the war would end if you would just stop fighting back.
And then on the other side of this, on the other side of all of these Sanskar people who are seemingly determined not to notice that they're killing people, or on Katajina's side, are happy to make all kinds of outlandish excuses for the fact that they're killing a lot of people. We have Uso's mother, who is not fighting on their side, but the mere fact that she is inside this machine while it is crushing people to death fills her with horror and disgust.
I mean, that line hit me like a ton of bricks.
Oh, it was awful.
Same. That's the problem of being a citizen in a nation. Like, every one of us
ought to feel some responsibility for the things that our nation does.
Right. Whether we like it or not, whether we struggle against it or not.
We're all in the machine.
We are deep in the belly of the machine. We pay taxes, we buy products. By the mere process of living our lives, because of the system that we are in, we are partially complicit in the horrors of that system and all the things done by those who wield power on our behalf.
Uso's mom might also be a little bit of a new type herself and is feeling what's happening on a deeper level, even than someone with a very active imagination and a lot of empathy would do.
Mm-hmm.
Although I was never entirely clear on where Underhook was, we are now in Mexico. Gundam, and I think especially Victory Gundam, has never hesitated to hearken to real locations. But this episode uses its setting to very great effect. Firstly, it's very brief, but there's the guy in the hammock in the fishing shack who has to run out of there before it gets destroyed. The shot of a building with the clusters of peppers drying from the eaves, the palm thatch before it gets destroyed. This is a very different place from Uig. It has its own culture, its own character, but it's a lived-in place, a place full of people. I don't even know how to describe it. It adds to the sense of humanity without them having to animate a bunch of people.
It reminds me also a bit of Barcelona, in that this is clearly a city that is, like, not doing great, kind of falling on hard times. A lot of wrecked buildings, a lot of, shipwrecks around. That there's that destroyed bridge that seems to have been destroyed long before the Motorads got there. The infrastructure is decaying. The city probably has many, many fewer inhabitants now than it did at its heyday.
I'm glad you brought up Barcelona, because this is the other thing that I've noticed. This city and Barcelona are probably the most distinctive ones we've been shown so far. And both of them have, as one of their most recognizable and identifiable features, a church.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them are sites of horrible violence. And that we have this invading army in the name of religion destroying these other religious sites. And beautiful architecture and old cities,
mm-hmm.
Pieces of human history and culture.
Mm-hmm.
For the sake of what? Honestly, am not clear on what purpose it serves them to raise all these cities.
Mm-hmm. Well, when Katagina talks about killing the adults to fertilize the ground for the benefit of the children, my initial response to this was to think, well, all of those children are just going to become adults someday too. Are you going to kill them as well? Is the problem adults? But then I thought, on a second level, maybe what Katagina is talking about here is the desire for a new, fresh start, a clean break from the past.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When she talks about, let it all burn, to be unencumbered by the past.
And that is an understandable fantasy. I'm sure you've felt that. I've felt that. The desire to just throw all of this away and start over fresh. But we don't do it because it doesn't work.
It's an impossibility.
You can't start over fresh. You can't throw it all away. And if you did, you would just end up making the same mistakes as before. Growth and progress are iterative. You can't just wipe the slate clean like it's a chalkboard or something.
And on some level, maybe Katagina is thinking, well, we could raise children in Mariaism, so then they would have the correct values. It's hard to convince adults to change, but kids we can raise properly.
Mm-hmm.
Except they're killing all the kids too, so what is she talking about?
But even on a theoretical level, right? I don't know, maybe if there were a way to make people permanently children.
Well,
right? Or do a Logan, is it Logan's Run thing where they kill everybody when they turn 21 or something?
I think so. But also, I think it's super common in a lot of religions, in a lot of various sort of philosophical traditions or ethoses that people have, to think that, oh, well, if I just tightly control what my children are exposed to, they will turn out exactly the way I want and with exactly my values. And while that can be effective to some degree, it's never 100% effective. I mean, this is why a bunch of deeply religious people homeschool their children, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want them exposed to secular education. I only want them exposed to, well, I shouldn't say deeply religious even, because what they are is controlling.
Mm-hmm.
And so the removal of everything that's not Zanskar and Mariaism leaves people with no other options. And on the Ligue Militaire side, It's just all of them trying desperately not to feel powerless in the face of this stronger force. They're waiting for reinforcements, but we wind up with another suicide attack with the old man Polycule lamenting that, well, our efforts to try to stop them without blowing up their ships were probably never going to work.
Mm-hmm. And the difficulty of fighting with one hand behind their back like that.
And Uso's grief at the end of the episode, that he doesn't even really care about the war as a whole anymore. And when he yells, "We can't just let them go," he is talking both about these ships that will continue to level cities, but also the ship that's carrying his mother and Shakti. And Odello proving that sometimes the best thing a friend can do for you is punch you in the face.
Provide an effective challenge to break you out of these unproductive spirals.
Save you from yourself.
Yeah. Uso needs the boys. The boys need Uso, but Uso definitely needs the boys. There's an irony, going back to what Katajina is saying about the children, there's an irony in her saying this to Uso, since Uso is living proof that killing all of the adults just turns the children into your enemies.
I can't do anything but shake my head at her sort of repeated comments that he just refuses to understand. That if he just, considered Mariaism in good faith, then he would understand why they do what they do. This was another episode with some great animation. I particularly liked the underwater stuff. Again, the bubbles, the currents, the explosions, all the movement of the water around them as they fight. I thought was very cool.
There's some wonderfully composed stills, like when the Motorrad battleships are rolling away from the fight and there's the nuclear explosion in the background.
Well, there's one where there is like a screen overlay or a sight overlay over an image of the Motorrads coming straight toward the camera and one of the churches in the foreground of it as well that really struck me.
Mm-hmm.
But the scene that I liked is maybe not the right word, but the scene that hit me the hardest was towards the end after that second explosion initiated by Uso.
Mm-hmm.
Everything goes red. Everyone's comms get disrupted, so nobody can talk to each other. They can't check on each other. It becomes much more tense, much more chaotic and frightening. Everybody is pouring sweat. The pilots all have sweat drops on them. At one point, Uso wipes his arm across his face. It's just extremely menacing.
Mm-hmm. And almost nothing drives home the invincibility of the Motorrad fleet, quite like seeing them just fly away from the nuclear explosion. A massive nuke goes off right in front of them, and one of the smaller battleships gets disabled by it, and the others just take off and go for a little joyride.
Mm-hmm.
Let's pivot now and finish by talking about something a little bit more fun: nuclear explosions. Because nuclear fusion reactors don't explode, or at least they shouldn't. Nuclear fission reactors can go critical and explode, but fusion reactors, the process should just stop. If the reactor fails, there shouldn't be a big explosion. So why do mobile suits explode like this? And the theory I've read on this, and I think the only thing that makes sense, is there's something else going on in these fusion reactors that causes the huge explosions. Something about the ultra-compact Minovsky reactor makes it explosive.
I was going to suggest that it's something about the Minovsky particles.
It could be. And the most compelling argument for this I've seen, and this is purely fanfic, this is fan theories for how this might work, but that there's some other element being used in the fusion reaction that causes it to go critical like this. And the theory is that it's solium. You made a face at me, like you have never heard this word before in your life.
Correct.
But in fact, it's merely that you haven't heard it in 6 years, because solium was the unexplained mystery material that was essential for the Zeon War effort that McVeigh was mining in his secret mining operations all around Odessa. The special element that he sent like 10 years worth of off to space before the Federation managed to recapture Odessa. The element that is never mentioned again in the rest of the Gundam franchise.
It would be extremely Gundam for that to be the explanation.
In the absence of a better one, I'm sticking to that. Every mobile suit reactor has to have a little bit of solium in it, and when they explode, it's the solium that turns them into these huge bombs. See? Everything can be explained. And now, here's Nina with some cool facts about bridges, and also a church.
I'm always on the lookout for natural and architectural features that tell us a bit more about the world of the Universal Century, and this episode delivered. When the two forces are headed toward the coast from the open water, they fly past what appears to be part of a bridge or overpass. Large concrete supports and road broken and jutting out of the water. Cables and the wreck of a ship, either crashed into the bridge or wrecked some other way and come to rest there. The bridge has quite a distinctive shape, a Y shape under the road and an inverted Y over it, or sort of a diamond rhombus shape with the road in the middle if you prefer. I hoped that this shape, plus the outside the episode knowledge that this episode happens in Mexico, would help us find it. And I was right, although it turns out that shape is fairly typical of this type of bridge. Between Tom and I, we found two candidates for the bridge. The Puente Tampico, or Tampico Bridge, in Tampico, Mexico, or the Puente Ingeniero Antonio Dovalli Jaime, also known as the Puente Coatza II, in the city of Coatzacoalcos, in the state of Veracruz. They both have the same structure. They're both cable-stayed bridges in or near coastal cities. Both were designed to withstand heavy traffic, coastal conditions, earthquakes, hurricanes, and petrochemical fumes and contaminants. Both are port cities with significant oil and gas exports. The Tampico Bridge went into service on October 17, 1988, and was the inaugural winner of the Premio Internacional Puente de Alcántara, an award for public works and civil engineering projects in the Ibero-American sphere that are of significant cultural, technological, aesthetic, functional, or social importance, executed to the highest technical standards. It crosses the Panuco River and has a total length of 1,543 meters, is 18 meters wide, and 55 meters tall at the highest part of the span. The Puente Ingeniero Antonio Dovalli Jaime, named for the engineer who created the geophysics program at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, went into service on September 1, 1984, after approximately 5 years of construction. Multiple sources say it was considered one of the 10 most important works in the world when it began operation, but I couldn't find out by whom. A couple of sources linked to an article that was a dead link now, so there's a fun mystery. Multiple sources also made a point of the size of the team that built it, around 3,500 people for design, engineering, and construction. For this bridge, I found a few more sources than for the first, but unfortunately they gave vastly different stats. I'm talking total lengths of 2,888 meters versus 1,170 meters. I assume they're measuring from different points and are using slightly different definitions of length. I know for bridges, that's not as cut and dry as we might think it. But yeah, vastly different numbers. One point on which there was broad agreement, the bridge was incredibly important to the economy of the southeast of Mexico. In fact, there was already a bridge for vehicular traffic over the Coatzacoalcos River, which had been in service since 1962. But the volume of traffic trying to cross had increased significantly, and wait times to cross had grown. There had also been an accident in 1972. A ship collided with one of the pylons, bringing down a 30-meter-long chunk of the span. The bridge was closed for 30 days, leaving no convenient way for vehicles to cross the river. So that's looking likely as the bridge referenced in this episode. It also makes more sense based on the map of Zanskar troop movement that we see, and the identity of the town based on the painted dome on the cathedral roof. One final point in its favor, I consulted one of the many online interactive maps that show you coastal flooding projections based on different sea level rise scenarios, and of the two cities, Tampico and Coatzacoalcos, Coatzacoalcos is the more vulnerable to sea level rise. I just called it a cathedral, but I was wrong. It is in fact the parroquia, or church, de Santa Prisca y San Sebastián, commonly called the Parroquia de Santa Prisca or Parroquia Santa Prisca de Taxco. We'll post screenshots and photos. The dome is a dead ringer. Located in Taxco, Mexico, a small city 106 miles or 170 kilometers southwest of Mexico City, the church's construction was ordered and funded by a prosperous silver mine owner, José de la Borda. Completed in 1759 after 8 years of construction, the church was, for almost 50 years thereafter, the tallest building in Mexico. You may notice, if you look at a map, that Taxco is nowhere near the ocean. Not even with the sea level rise map set to its most extreme setting is Taxco near the sea. It's 1,778 meters / 5,833 feet above sea level. But we must make allowances for a certain amount of artistic license on the show's part. Though the dome is what's most prominent in this episode, it's rarely mentioned in sources because what the church is most famous for is its carvings, inside and out. It is considered a prime example of the Churrigueresque style. Sometimes called ultra-Baroque, one source described it as at once Baroque and animistic. It's a decorative excess instrumental in creating a sense of rupture from the vernacular to a new, marvelous realm. The Wikipedia page mentions a legend associated with the church, which I will quote in its entirety. You will understand why by the time I am done. While it was in construction, José de la Borda left Taxco on business, leaving construction work to the builders. Soon after Borda left, the sky filled with black clouds and cold winds struck the streets, whistling through the towers of the unfinished church. The dark and cold terrified the workmen as the large storm approached. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck, showing an undefined black silhouette that was swooping down on the church. Then it struck the cupola of the church, lighting it brilliantly. All of the tile covering the cupola began to shine with strange lights, allowing the inscription, Gloria a Dios en las alturas y paz en la tierra a los hombres de buena voluntad. Glory to God in the highest and peace on earth for men with good will, to be seen clearly. The whole town got down on their knees to pray, fearing that angry demons would destroy the church. Floating around the church were flashes of light, and above the church appeared a beautiful woman who, smiling and with a peaceful face, caught the following lightning bolts in her hands. Next time on episode 10.35, the title gives it away. We research and discuss Victory Gundam episode 35 and Rookie Mistake. Haro in the Vanguard. Okay, so all you need to know is the Federation is Lucy and the Ligue Militaire is Charlie Brown. Sasuga Mira. Punk Haro's Legacy. When you meet a cute girl, but she's in a cult. Mom, this is so embarrassing! Karaman is so used to battle, he's fussier when there aren't explosions. But seriously, does Haro feel pain? And Shakti continues to be painfully naive. Please listen to it!
Mobile Suit Breakdown is written, recorded, and produced by us, Tom and Nina, in scenic New York City, within the ancestral and unceded land of the Lenape people, and made possible by listeners like you. The opening track is Wasp by Misha Dioxin. The closing music is Long Way Home by Spinning Ratio. The recap music is Slow by Lloyd Rogers. You can find links to the sources for our research, the music used in the episode, additional information about the Lenape people, and more in the show notes on our website, GundamPodcast.com. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email hosts@GundamPodcast.com or look for links to our social media accounts on our website. And if you would like to support the show, please share us with your friends, leave a nice review wherever you listen to podcasts, or support us financially at GundamPodcast.com/Patreon. You can find links and more ways to help out at GundamPodcast.com/support. Thank you for listening. And now, the recap, which hasn't been written yet.
The bridge was closed for 30 days. Come here. Come. Folks, Kat and recording hack, I've figured out a way to get her into my lap while I'm recording, and she's much less tetchy about that.
You like my new lamp?
I do. I'm a little envious. It's a very cool lamp. It's way cooler than my lamp.
Would you like one of your own? It wasn't that expensive.
We already have this, we have this. This is fine. I don't need another. And actually, does that do white light or it only does yellow? Can you switch? Okay, that's pretty slick.
In 10 years, will it be possible to buy a hairdryer that is not Wi-Fi enabled and smart?
Ooh.
That does not report on your hair drying tendencies to corporate?
Shuddering over here. Am I going to single-handedly keep small appliance repair people afloat because I'm going to be looking for old that does not have Wi-Fi? And be like, can you make this work, please? Finally get our own soldering kit so we can do small electrical repairs ourselves. Things would have to go very, very wrong, but I'm sure calligraphy could kill me.